What if I told you that the new pope was actually black? That's right. The new pope has got some crazy family lineage, and it's all been covered up due to a single law that tore black families apart and determined who would become white enough to live a comfortable life in America free from Jim Crow racism. The question isn't just whether the pope knows his own history, but why America created an entire system that forced his family to hide their black heritage. But now the cat is coming out of the bag, and the Catholic Church is going to have to confront an unexpected truth. Their new American Pope has black ancestry, and that will not be ignored. The Pope's story doesn't start in the Vatican, or even in Chicago. It begins in New Orleans' 7th Ward, a place that most Catholic historians don't talk about when they discuss Pope Leo XIV's background. You see, the 7th Ward wasn't some privileged white suburban neighborhood. It was a place where Black, French, Spanish, and Native American people created one of America's richest cultures, the Creole community that shaped the Pope's family for generations. What the Vatican never mentioned in their official biography was sitting in plain sight all along. The 1900 census records show Pope Leo XIV's grandparents, Joseph Martinez and Louise Baquier, weren't listed as white. They were recorded as mulatto, the term used for mixed-race people with African ancestry. Joseph Martinez may have been born in Haiti, bringing with him connections to the world's first black republic. Louise Baquier was a New Orleans native whose family had likely been in the city for generations. For the Martinez family, the Catholic Church became the center of their social world, a place where Creole families could maintain their dignity when evil outside forces tried to strip it away. You see, at the time, the Martinez family lived in a community under siege. Louisiana's white power structure had been working to destroy the special position Creole families had carved out for themselves, using Jim Crow laws to slowly suffocate the blackness of Creole communities. Streetcars that had once been integrated suddenly had colored sections. Schools that had accepted Creole children started turning them away. Jobs that had been open to light-skinned people of color were now suddenly for whites only. Each year brought new restrictions, new humiliations, new dangers. The Martinez family watched as the possibilities for their children's futures narrowed year by year. And so, the Pope's family was forced to make a choice: stay in the city they loved and accept a future with limited education, restricted housing, and constant danger, or leave everything behind, including their racial identities, to protect their children. Census records show they chose the latter, joining thousands of families fleeing north and removing all trace of their black lineage. By 1920, something strange happened on those census records. The Martinez family, who had moved to Chicago during the Great Migration, were suddenly listed as white. Not mulatto, not colored, white. This wasn't some random mistake by a tired government worker. This was an intentional act of survival. Down in Louisiana, they took race so seriously that they had actual race enforcers. Naomi Drake was the most notorious. From 1949 to 1965, she worked as the head of the Bureau of Vital Statistics in New Orleans. Her job was to hunt through records and find anyone she suspected might have black ancestry. She kept a personal watch list of 250 mostly old Creole surnames, names she deemed suspiciously black, and ordered her staff to dig through generations of birth, death, and marriage records to hunt for even the faintest trace of African ancestry. If your name showed up on her race list, you were under investigation. It didn't matter if you were born with light skin or lived your life as a white person. If Drake's staff found a black ancestor 5 generations back, your entire identity could be revoked. Families were told they were now legally colored. And if they resisted, they would get no birth certificate, no school enrollment, no marriage license, no legal representation, no job. Let's be clear, Naomi Drake and people like her were the gatekeepers of oppression. They didn't need whips or chains. They had pens, files, and the cold authority of the state. They acted like racial detectives, digging through black people's lives, not to serve justice, but to destroy it. The Great Migration wasn't just black folks moving north. It was also a chance for some to shed the racial classification that had kept them trapped. In the South, race wasn't just about how you looked. It was about who your ancestors were, and the white power structure kept careful track. But in Chicago, those census takers didn't know the complex racial categories of New Orleans. They just saw what was in front of them, a light-skinned family with European surnames. What the Martinez family did was called passing, pretending to be white to escape the horrible consequences of being black in America. Passing wasn't about denying who you were inside. It was about changing how the government classified you on paper so you could get a decent job, buy a house in a safe neighborhood, and send your kids to good schools. For many families with Creole heritage, this paper transformation meant the difference between having a future and having none at all. Being white was a key that unlocked doors, and blackness, well, that was a prison sentence that followed you everywhere. Sounds like things haven't really changed all that much, have they? While Pope Leo XIV climbed the ranks of the Catholic Church, something truly sinister was happening back in his ancestral home of Louisiana. A law stayed on the books there until 1983. Yes, 1983. That would have classified the Pope himself as a black man if he had remained in the state. This wasn't some dusty, forgotten rule. This was active legislation that shaped real people's lives every single day. They called it the Black Blood Law, and it worked like this. If you had even one 32nd African ancestry, just one great-great-great-grandparent out of 32, you were legally black, period. End of discussion. Think about that. One ancestor from 5 generations back determined your entire legal identity. This wasn't just some abstract label. This determined where you lived, who you married, which schools your children attended, which hospitals would treat you, which jobs you could apply for, and yes, which water fountain you could drink from. Pope Leo XIV's rise through the ranks of the Catholic Church is presented as a tale of spiritual devotion, humility, and intellect. But what's often overlooked is what the Church itself has historically stood for when it comes to race, particularly blackness. For centuries, the Catholic Church played a direct role in propping up colonialism around the globe. It issued papal bulls in the 15th century that sanctioned the enslavement of Africans. It baptized slave ships. It blessed colonizers as they pillaged in the name of God. And while it preached salvation for all souls, it also taught that African people were cursed descendants of Ham, fit for servitude. Even in modern times, the Catholic hierarchy remained complicit. The Vatican was slow to condemn colonial violence, silent during apartheid, and for far too long ignored the racism embedded in its own institutions. In the United States, Black Catholics were forced to sit in the back pews, barred from seminaries, and buried in segregated graveyards. There are still dioceses today where no Black bishop has ever served. Pope Leo XIV's connection to the Augustinian order, a religious tradition rooted in the teachings of St. Augustine, an African bishop from Hippo, now feels almost poetic. In trying to distance themselves from their blackness to survive, the Pope's family ended up honoring their African legacy anyway, perhaps without even realizing it. The real question now isn't just what this means for Pope Leo XIV. It's what it means for the millions of Black and mixed-race people whose stories were erased. But the truth always has a way of surfacing, even when it's buried 5 generations deep.